Welcome to another episode of the Tectonic Takes podcast. Here with me today, Ivan Ornelas is Abel and Abram. So we're going to talk about a very fun result, one of the best wins of the year in terms of the caliber of opposition, beating Philadelphia Union 2-1. And we'll start with you, Abel. What were your initial thoughts on that game?
I thought it was a really good match. It was very organized from the Quakes. They were looking at their options pretty well. First half, we were looking at Cade Cowell going up the left flank. In the second half, that kind of went down a little bit. They started finding Christian Espinoza more. So it was good to know that both sides of the team were working pretty well. They held on to the result, which I think is the most important part. There were a few instances where, they were controlling the score, but just one play is all that Philadelphia needs to get a result from you. So I think it was an overall really good result.
Agreed. It was definitely a positive result. That was one of the games I was most worried about when I previewed the upcoming June/July 1st slate to include the Stanford Galaxy game in my most recent article. Your thoughts on the game, Abram?
Yeah, I had some friends who had never come to a Quicks game before. This was their first game, and they were asking me questions, and I was trying to stay optimistic, and sell our team to them. But I was worried. I was worried before the match. Philadelphia had been on a 9-game undefeated streak, if I recall correctly, and the on-pitch performance surprised me in a good way. I thought everyone did um, well and performed to the best of their abilities. I wasn't really disappointed in anyone today. Um, even like Tanner Beeson, who's usually a backup player for us, he performed out of his skin. He was like acrobatic, getting to everything, and yeah, it was a great performance and a really fun match to watch above all else.
Right. When you look at the Philadelphia Union lineup, there are a few absences. Most notable one being Olivier Mbaizo, who, and the same day as the Quakes were playing Philadelphia in San Jose, about 400, 500 miles south in San Diego, he was representing Cameroon in a 2-2 draw against Mexico. So he was a little bit busy that day, but while Mbaizo, Kai Wagner, Elliott, and Glesnes usually make up the preferred back line of four, they're very flexible. They can run a 3-5 back, 4. When the next defenders up for them are Harriel and Jamal Lowe, this is one of the strongest defenses in MLS right now. And their front three of Gazdag, Carranza, and Ure, limiting them to 0 goals was very impressive. That one goal came from Jamal Lowe finishing off a Kai Wagner chance. So if you're an MLS fantasy owner of Kai Wagner like myself, you've maybe felt a little bit guilty about that one goal. It's like, okay, that's good for me, not great for San Jose, but ultimately San Jose Earthquakes got made good on their opportunities, and what great goals there were. While Traco was probably the better of the two goals, Bobosi did a pretty good job himself, right? So, Abel, tell us a little bit more about that Bobosi goal.
Yeah, it started all the way in the midfield, and I think Ibobosi is just that striker that he isn't just looking to poach goals in the box. He'll create the play with you. So that's kind of what we saw, right? He sent that through ball to Cade Cowell. Cade Cowell was looking really sharp in those first few minutes of the game, and he found him at the edge of the box. And that was just a perfect finish. I mean, it's so like it's inch perfect, right? Against one of the best goalkeepers in the league, and he wasn't getting that. So I just think we have to recognize, yes, the finish was great, but it all started with that pass from midfield.
All right. Abram, did you have a chance to look at some of the other goals this week, like the Zelarayan and Gioacchini goals?
Yeah, I did see them. They're all over Twitter, so it would be hard to miss them. But Saturday was a great day for goals in this league. There was quite a few
Did
bangers.
you say Traco rounds up the top 3?
Um, Probably. I think the way he struck that ball, and like if you're watching like the movement of the ball, and like it's just beautiful, And being a left back as well, obviously we're not strangers to our left backs and right backs scoring goals in this team, but Yeah, it was a really nice goal. Obviously, it can't top that Zellerman goal, but no, yeah, very happy with it, and definitely goal of the season so far for us.
I don't think any goal this season will top the halfway line goal from Zelarayan at the last minute for Columbus Crew to beat Chicago Fire. But Trauco did an incredible job on his own. And is it enough for him to be the player of the match this week, or does Daniel get it once again? What do you think, Abel?
Is it
Um,
Abel or Abram?
Something that Abram said. Yeah, it's
I
me,
said
right?
Abel. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
sorry.
Yes.
Abram mentioned that you can't really be disappointed in any player in this past game, which I think is really fair. I think more than anything, the whole team just came out to play. I could probably give it to Trauco, also
Mm-hmm.
considering that they only let in one goal and it was from a corner kick,
Mm-hmm.
and he obviously gave it the decisive goal. So I think it's fair to give it to Trauco.
Yeah. Daniel's been given his flowers, and maybe it's a little bit of voter fatigue on my part. I think Trauco can get it this time, but Daniel's been impressive. Abram, who is your player of the match?
I mean, obviously both those players did very well. I don't think anyone stepped a foot wrong. However, someone who I think played out of their skin last night or Saturday, sorry. Um, it feels like last night because I'm still thinking about it. It's still fresh in my mind. Jermaine Montero, I think, against his former club, just like really wanted to show
Okay.
what they were missing and was running more, creating more,
Right.
getting more stuck in. And it's what we were missing from last season, in my opinion, because he's been a little bit stale. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that. But this was the Jermaine Montero that we're used to, and hopefully we can find a way to keep that energy going. You know, because even though we're going to be missing him in international duty, I would love to see more of that from him.
All right. And Montero, of course, was suspended the last time the Quakes hosted the Philadelphia Union. So this meant a lot to him to play against his former team. And I still maintain that the situation with Jamiro Montero, it's a win-win. You could argue that if Montero's still there, do they have the version of Daniel Gazdag that Philadelphia Union enjoys so much now? Probably not. So ultimately, it benefited both parties that Montero is now San Jose Earthquakes player, and Gazdag has now developed into one of the best attacking midfielders in Major League Soccer as well. So, but it's still, it's where, he spent a lot of years with the Philadelphia Union. He was beloved by the fans. Our good friend El Parcero from one of the Philadelphia Union podcasts, he was really disappointed to see Montero go, and he still has a lot of love for him. So you could tell what his time meant to the fans of Philadelphia Union, and we had those similar reactions with players coming and going as well. Um, and Quakes weren't the only team. The senior team weren't the only team to enjoy a win this week. So, Abram, give us a recap of the game between Quakes 2 and Tacoma Defiance.
So yeah, Tacoma Defiance, for those who don't know, are Seattle Sounders kind of B team, and they really impressed me. I thought that they had very talented players on their team, but obviously you guys want to hear about our players, and we had a lot of first team players starting. We had Nika Shakirius, we had Buddha, we had Mooney. Walls was back in the lineup. He'd been out for a while. Who else? Who am I missing? Yeah, I mean, yeah, we had a bunch of big name players. We had Baldissimo actually. He played for a lot of the game, and unfortunately, I don't think that they found the chemistry. I don't think that they trained together very often. I think it's kind of like they split the two groups, you know. So Baldissimo, it took him a few touches to kind of get into the game and start like being the architect for the for the midfield, but ultimately it ended 1-1. Quake scored first. However, a nice goal from Baker Whiting leveled it up. We went to penalties, and we ended up, even though Emi Ochoa made a great save, their keeper responded with a save of his own, and so we had to go to sudden death. And eventually, AJ Edwards, the Quakes 2 I think current backup right back scored the winner, and which is great for him because the week prior he had actually missed the losing penalty. So yeah, very happy to see that from him. And that's 2 points for Quakes 2 in a very on and off again season where they're winning on the road but they're having trouble at home. So I'm just lucky and happy that I didn't drive out there to see another loss.
Yeah, I think that it's been an interesting topsy-turvy sort of season for Quakes too. They're currently in eighth with 17 points, 12 games played, but they're only 8 points off second Austin. Colorado Rapids 2 are running away within the Western Conference. But on the flip side, they're only 6 points away from second last LA Galaxy 2. So, and then LAFC 2 is at the bottom. So at least we're the best of the California teams in Quakes 2. So over in the Major League Soccer table, San Jose Earthquakes are still in that fifth position, but they gained some ground with that win. I know it's a weird thing to say because, Philadelphia Union are an Eastern Conference team, so we're not technically gaining ground in that sense. But as of now, we're currently locked on points and 26 points each, with LAFC, who, of course, have 3 games in hand on us because they've missed so many to play in the CONCACAF Champions League. And then level on points as well with FC Dallas, who we, of course, drew a few games ago, and Dallas had played one extra game on us, so we technically have the edge there. I think that honestly, as much as we would like to see some movement in the places to get to fourth or third, I think just standing pat at fifth and having that 4 point gap with six in Vancouver is still a good position to be in. And obviously, we would have taken this at the start of the season, right, Abel?
Definitely. If I recall in that first podcast of the season, we were talking about like, man, maybe like a just barely a playoff team. We're happy with that. I
Seventh,
mean,
eighth, or ninth. Yeah.
yeah. So we're more than happy to accept this position, and it looks like they're just getting stronger. I mean, these past few games have shown that it is possible to just keep improving. I mean, from going from no road wins to 4 out of 6 points in the road in the past 2 games, and then beating one of the top teams in the East. The Earthquakes are in the best position in this entire season.
Right. We're going to shift gears a little bit to talk a little bit about the international fixtures that are going on. Of course, it's summer, which means a lot of international games are coming, and they've already been in full force. We just wrapped up the U20 World Cup with Uruguay beating Italy 1-0. Uruguay, of course, the team that knocked out USA in the quarterfinals. So if you're going to go out to the eventual champion. You can hold your head up high there. And just this morning, of course, Ukraine and Germany had a surprisingly entertaining game for 3-3. If only Ukraine could hang on for that famous win, but Germany managed to come back from a bit of a Antonio Rudiger disaster class to even it 3-3. So that's just friendlies there. Of course, the CONCACAF Nations League is happening this Thursday. The semifinals will be happening in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, Canada versus Panama, and USA versus Mexico. So, Abel, what's one thing that you're going to be keeping an eye on for that USA-Mexico game?
Definitely that class is going to be really interesting because we have an experienced U.S. side, but they also don't have a coach,
Right.
right?
They
And
got BJ Callahan.
right, but Mexico now has a 2 games or a few games under Diego Coca. This past cycle, right? They beat Guatemala, and they just tied against Cameroon. Not the most convincing games, but they do kind of have that experience going forward. So I think it's going to be really interesting, and I'll actually be there to cover that game. So I'm really excited to do that coverage for area.
How you think Folarin Balogun will fare in his USA debut? Should it happen this Thursday, Abram?
You said Abram this time, right?
Yes.
All right, cool. Um, I believe that he can be a real thorn in Mexico's side. side with his pace, and obviously he's a quality player, even besides being a very fast player. Um, and I don't know how well he will have acclimated to playing with his international teammates in the short amount of time he's had, but I would love to see it. I know that there's been some talk about whether or not he'll start because of the fact that he hasn't had much time to play alongside them, his teammates. I mean, it'll be very interesting. I think it'll be a game that even if you're not following USMNT or Mexico, it'll be a fun game to watch just to see that connection.
All right. So for the semifinals between Canada and Panama, I think we'll be in unison that we think Canada will advance to the final. Panama being the weakest of the four teams, but still a solid team. But how about for Mexico versus USA? Who do you think wins that one, Abram?
Mexico vs USA has been a tough one for me as a Mexican. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
Mexican American too. But my whole life I followed Mexico, and as much as I would like Mexico to break the trend of losing to the U.S. in these tournaments, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I don't see anything trending upwards for Mexico. Unfortunately, I would love to say otherwise, but I think that the U.S. are going to edge it.
All right, Abel.
I think it's going to be a very draining match. It's probably going to go to extra time if I'm being honest. But I think Mexico could probably get the result and head out to the final, which I think will be a very big morale boost because the fan base has been really desperate for quite some time now. So I think they're going to put out everything in the field to get their fan base something to celebrate.
All right. I'm going to go with USA beating Mexico, but for the final, I think that Canada will beat USA for the CONCACAF Nations League. I think that the way things are going with USA and Mexico, Canada are going to win one of the two tournaments. I don't see them winning the Gold Cup, but I think they can win the Nations League. And as for the Gold Cup, because the USA somehow managed to grind it out with a similar level of roster 2 years ago, starting the likes of Sebastian Lletget, which we don't like him anymore. That
Nope,
now that he did that to Becky G, uh, but
my
I
off
think
right
that the
there.
USA, despite having a bit of a B team for their Gold Cup roster, they managed to win Gold Cups with that before, and I think that it'll just be a Gold Cup too soon for Mexico, and I don't think Canada's ready yet to win the Gold Cup, but they'll win the shorter Nations League. Any other thoughts on Gold Cup or Nations League before we move on to the Quakes international call-ups?
Nope.
All right then. So Cade Cal is the headliner of the international call-ups. We'll talk about him for a little bit. After a pretty successful U20 World Cup, he's now going to be in the Gold Cup roster, and I think that whether he's starting or whether he's coming off the bench, he will play most games. I think that he's shown enough productivity in the U20 World Cup, as well as what he can offer with his speed, his physicality, and now his improving technical ability, that it wouldn't make sense for BJ Callahan not to use him at all at the Gold Cup, and especially given the opponents. Jamaica being the toughest one, Nicaragua a bit of a less experienced side, especially as they've only been participating in the Gold Cup more regularly since the expansion of 16 teams. And then there will be a qualifier that will round out that group, the best of those teams being Trinidad and Tobago. So I think that this will be a good opportunity for Cade Cowell. How do you imagine he'll make an impact, Abram?
I mean, I'm hoping that he can stay on this current form. He's looking really good right now. He has confidence. He's in shape. He's beating players, and he looks like he wants to make a difference. Sorry, there's a plane. Sorry, hold on.
All right, Abel, your thoughts on Cowell's prospects now with the USA senior team for the Gold Cup?
I mean, he had an amazing U20 World Cup. Then he had a good game against Philadelphia. It just looks like everything's going to go up for him. I think if he manages to really show off this summer, big things await him.
Right.
I think it's going to be really this could be a pivotal moment for his career. You know, maybe we don't want to think about it like that. Like it's just the Gold Cup, and we want to keep seeing him with the Quakes. But I really do think that since there are already so many eyes on him, that this could be like his opportunity to maybe secure a move to Europe.
Right. I still am part of the camp where I like to temper expectations in the sense that Kate Cal is still 19 years old. So
Hmm.
it's not like this summer is his last chance to move to Europe or he becomes an MLS lifer. So it's okay if maybe the Gold Cup doesn't come as naturally to him as the U20 World Cup did. But what I am seeing and what gives me more confidence is from a year ago when he was called up and then he returned to San Jose Earthquakes. It felt like he had a regression in form. But we haven't seen that, even if it's been a smaller sample size with his return to the Quakes, that he's been fairly consistent regardless of where he's been playing, and he's been improving with every game. So we are hopeful that he'll have a successful tournament, and if it's his time to go to Europe at the end of this season, based on what he's accomplished for club and country, I think that that would be fine by Quakes fans. I feel like he's done right by the club. He's been an incredible player to watch, and he is an exciting player that if he does make that next step beyond San Jose Earthquakes, that he can be uh, incredibly beneficial to the national team and have a great career ahead of him. Along with Cal, so we have Carlos Grezo representing Ecuador, Miguel Traco representing Peru, Ramiro Montero representing Cape Verde, and Carlos Acapo representing Equatorial Guinea. So that's five players that the San Jose Earthquakes are going to have to try to adjust without. So let's try to come up with a starting lineup based on, let's assume all five of them are gone at the same time, because I know there's different periods of time for these national teams when they're playing. So they may be leaving at different times. Obviously, goalkeeper remains unchanged. We have Daniel there. Um, Back line, I'm thinking with our fullbacks gone, it's going to have to be Paul Marie and Tommy Thompson, with Tanner Beeson and Rodriguez currently the center back pairing until Mensa gets reintegrated. Any objections there?
No, I was literally about to say Palmery at left back. I was about to scream it, but
Yeah.
when I got to
I
first.
mean, I don't object because I feel like you're correct that Tommy Thompson will be, the right back. I do think that we have better options, but in terms of experience, I don't think that anyone's had more experience, for us than Tommy. So uh, definitely, it'll be very likely to see him there. Yeah.
Who's the next one up besides Thompson? Are you thinking Muni would play as a fullback?
Muni, I think, has shown that he can definitely. He's very fast, very strong, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. Not as much as say Thompson or Palmery or Capo, someone like that. But he can go forward if he has to. Maybe not like to the end line, put in that cross. But he's a very capable fullback. He is more of a center back, but I would have no objections if you did put Muni in your starting 11 at right back.
Okay. So next our midfield, where we're also two players short now. Judson's injury recovery is coming at a good time. So we could slot him back at CDM, and then a midfield partnership of Jackson Yule and Nico Securities. Any objections there?
Nope, no, that's
All
perfect.
right. And then lastly, of course, the natural replacement for Kate Callis has often been the case. Benji Kikanovic alongside Christian Esmels and Jeremy Abobasi. Sounds about right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So based on that lineup, I think that we I haven't looked quite ahead on the calendar for when the other players are uh, aside from the U.S. men's national team's schedule, are going to be called upon. But we can assume that they can go anytime, so we have to be prepared for them not to be with the team as soon as this Saturday against Portland Timbers. So based on those absences and based on recent performances, so we got four games that we're kind of looking at in the relative short term. Portland at home, Houston away, St. Louis at home, and then Galaxy, Stanford at home. So I'm thinking that as great as the Quakes have been factoring these absences as well as the caliber of these opponents, and even the weakest of these four, if you want to consider Houston potentially the weakest, although potentially they might be higher than Portland in the standings. I'm just going to double check that real quick. Yes, they're 1 point ahead of Portland. So yeah, so Houston and Portland, let's put them in the same tier because we know how good. Actually, the Galaxy would still be the weakest, but it's the Derby match, so form goes out the window in there. But anyway, so based on the caliber of opponents, we got three solid playoff level teams. We got the Galaxy who beat us last time. So I'm thinking I'll take 8 points out of a possible 12 given all these factors. How would you feel about that, Abel?
That's fair. I think, like you said, when it comes to the LA Galaxy game, form goes out the window. So that one's going to be really tough considering how many players are available to us. But I also think that the Timbers and the Houston game could be quite challenging. You really just never know in MLS. They're probably the most winnable games, but you can never really, one could never really tell with this league. I am excited to see the St. Louis game. I think that one's going to be very exciting to watch. Brand new team. Um, you know, I think if they can get a result there, that would be a huge confidence booster going forward. So I'd definitely be looking at that one.
All right, Abram, how do you feel about that kind of points haul? If we could get it, do you think we should be aiming higher or lower?
I think that you got it spot on. I don't know if I have to pick higher or lower, but I think that
Yeah,
that's a good
it's okay.
good estimate. I think that this has been a weird season for us. We haven't seen anything like this for a while. Um, we win against good teams and we lose or tie against weaker teams, and it's been weird. But I think that we might have to like level out a little bit in these games because we're going to be missing a few players. But I think that you got your estimate pretty right.
All right. And lastly, before we address fan questions, I know some of them we've already answered, so we'll just acknowledge them if we have already answered them. This is our first time talking as a trio since the biggest news in MLS history happened. So, your thoughts on Lionel Messi in Miami, Abram?
Uh, so as a Messi fan, actually, okay, as a Messi fan, I am a little bit disappointed because I think that he could spend some more time in Europe. I think that he has quality to do so. And obviously, there's going to be the Ronaldo fans who now have the argument, despite him winning everything under the sun and the World Cup, uh, Ronaldo at 35 was at Juventus, and Messi is now going to Inter Miami. I think that's a ridiculous argument. It is like a whole different topic. But him going to this league, I think it's good for the sport. I think that it's yet another thing that will bring more eyes to MLS. I know that Inter Miami has gotten many more fans in the past week. Uh, Probably like quadrupled their fan base online.
Yeah.
Um, for as a Quakes fan though, I am kind of indifferent. I don't know if we actually went with that model of having every team, pitch in a little bit and pay for Messi. I don't know if there's any truth
Depends
to
where the
that.
money's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, but like if we were to do that, if we had done that, I would be even more upset about this deal because we're not going to see him. He's not going to come to San Jose, and so it doesn't really impact me as a Quakes fan. Because I would love to see Messi. I would love to see him at PayPal Park or Levi Stadium. It doesn't matter. I would love to see him, but unfortunately, I don't get to, and it's kind of like a teaser. You know what I mean? Uh, but ultimately, I think this will help. Grow the league. So it is an overall positive.
Yeah, but the fact that people who weren't following the earthquakes or MLS before are now asking me, "Oh, when do we play Inter Miami again?" and now are looking forward to the 2024 schedule drop if we do play Messi, even if that's the only reason they're paying attention, at least they've got their foot in the door now. It's an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about the domestic league in MLS and to learn more about the local game. Abel, your thoughts?
Best thing that could have happened to the sport here in America. I see people trying to compare it to David Beckham. Not everyone, but like I've seen some comparisons. I'm like, dude,
It's
no,
the closest we got, but it's no comparison.
it's no comparison. I mean, I guess you could say maybe the closest we have is Pele coming to the United States.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Uh,
MLS era Beckham would have been the closest, but of course,
yeah,
including NASL Pele, of course. Yeah.
yeah, but you know, I mean, I share the same feelings as Abram. I'd be really excited to see Messi. Uh, I think if they came to San Jose, which I don't think that's the case, I think the next game would have to be at Miami. But if they do come to San Jose, it's gonna have to be play at Levi Stadium. I mean, there's just no way that they would have the game at PayPal Park, right? It's too small for the amount of people that would want to see Messi play.
Right. I'm not sure if even Messi, like, we sell out Levi's because that would be like 80,000 people, but maybe. Like, that's how big it could be.
Yeah.
But it's an exciting time for the league, and even though that we won't be seeing him at PayPal Park this season, I mean MLS season pass, in the age of streaming, you get to watch Messi, his entire MLS journey if you want to. And yes, we could have already seen that with his time at PSG and Barcelona, but it's still going to be accessible to us in a way that it might not have been had it, the closest event possible, David Beckham 2007. It's a completely different world now, 16 years later. So we're going to go through the community questions that we have. Thank you to everyone on Twitter and Discord for sending us questions. Omar from the Goal Sided Discord, and he's also ventured into the Tectonic Takes Discord from time to time, asked, is Kate Cal coming back after making a leap in quality from the U20 World Cup? I think we're all in unison that Kate Cal has had that leap in quality, so we'll move on from there. It's called Football on Twitter asks, what do we think about parking the bus after seeing it the last three games? So, of course, the wins against the Sounders and Philadelphia Union and the 0-0 draw against the Rapids. The only time I was pissed, to be honest, was against the Rapids because after Moise Bombito got that red card, we should have taken advantage of the situation there. But the game situations, the Sounders and the Union, two of the best teams in MLS, and Sounders especially on the road, we did what we had to do. But I think the biggest thing to watch for Luchi Gonzalez and the way that he develops his play style is that I want to see that be more and more of a plan B and take more and more chances in those late game scenarios. It can't just be 20-minute spurts with defending and clearances. Thoughts on that style of play, Abel?
Like you said, it's a little frustrating when they do it against a team that could beat not easily, but they could definitely dominate the match. It's a little different when it's Seattle, when it's Philadelphia, when it's these top teams that you're kind of forced to retreat a little bit, or else their offense is just gonna score three on you, right? So I guess I'm not too worried about that. I'm not so frustrated to watch the team play a little bit conservatively if they know that it's going to get the result, because it's not like they're parking the bus the entire time. Also, like it's not boring to watch. So definitely, Lucci can work on not relying on that when they could go, all out. Using that Colorado game as a reference, they could have won that, especially being one man up. So I think it's a learning curve, but I don't think we should expect too much of that in the near future.
All right. Marin Quake asked, what's the likelihood of Benji and Cade's summer transfers? I think we established that a lot of it for Cade Cowell depends on how this Gold Cup goes. I don't think that we're going to sign off on a summer transfer because we do need Cade Cowell for the rest of the season unless it's a number that's too big for the Earthquakes to refuse. So most likely a move would have to happen in the off season. As for Benji Kikanovic, I don't see how he moves anytime soon. I don't think the Quakes would get too much for him. And I think that Benji needs some time on the bench, needs some time coming off the bench to regain his form again and to take these opportunities when Cade does go away on international duty for the Gold Cup to get some more opportunities and to improve. Otherwise, his biggest concern is not going to be getting a move out. It's going to be, will Richmond or Useni Buddha take some of his playing time if he doesn't improve? But as for incoming transfers, we know that there's got to be at least one player coming in because our squad could still be stretched thin a little bit, but we haven't heard anything on that front yet. But I will turn this over to you, Abram, as the Quakes 2 expert here. Who from Quakes 2 would you like to see, or do you think could see an opportunity when all these players are out for international duty?
So that's a bit of a complicated question due to the fact that there's Quakes 2 players and then there's players that belong to the first team who play with Quakes 2.
Right.
But I think that if we're just talking about people who haven't, played with the first team yet and are regularly showing for Quakes 2, I think that with our fullback situation, I would be very, very surprised if we don't call up Keegan Tingy. He's a
Mm-hmm.
very smart left fullback, but he's right-footed, kind of unorthodox. But I trust him to be able to play either side very comfortably. I would prefer to see Oscar Verhoeven because I think that he's a fullback with a lot of promise, someone that who is 16 now, but in a few years could be our starting right back. That's how much I believe in him. He has a lot of physical ability and a lot of technical skill to also, hold the ball. But the main thing about Verhoeven, for people who don't watch Quakes 2, is that he is extremely aggressive. He is like Carlos Puyol on the right fullback slot. He just wants every ball and he does not leave it 50-50. Every 50-50 ball for him is 70-30 because he's going in full capacity. He's like a steam train, and that's why I think that he will be featuring for us in the near future. But I just don't think that he's ready for the technical aspect of the first team.
He's got a little bit of Nathan in him, but he's got to develop a little bit more. Regarding outgoings, the only other player that could be out the door soon could be Rodriguez, depending on what happens with his loan deal, which expires at the end of June with Gremio. Gremio, of course, are in the middle of their season in the Brazilian Serie A, and they could definitely benefit from center back of Rodriguez's caliber getting back into the fold there. But they're also in a solid-ish spot there. They're currently sitting sixth in Brazil's top flight, and they're only 2 points off third with Flamengo. And it's still a pretty young season. Only 10 games have been played. So we'll see. I think that anything between now and 2.5 weeks from now, when we get to June 30th, could alter that situation. And Rodriguez is enjoying his game time here. There's no guarantee that he would get consistent game time in Gremio because, Brazil is a bit of a tougher league still. So we'll see how that goes. But hopefully something that can be worked out, at the very least, to extend his loan to the end of the season. It was a bit of an odd situation because since Brazil plays their domestic league in a similar calendar as Major League Soccer, you'd think that they'd have the loan line up with that, but it's more like the June 30th deadline for the European leagues. So, yeah, that's what we have there. And Roberto, aka LaFlame51, asks, with players going to international duty, which players should we look in to bring in during the summer window? Or should we bump up Quakes 2 players? We already discussed that. I don't have specific players in mind that I think we could get. At this point in the season, if we're talking about MLS players, there could be free agents that we look at. One potential free agent that I would have not minded seeing come to San Jose Earthquakes to beef up the midfield would have been Emerson Heineman, who was a free agent once his contract expired at Atlanta United, but now he's gone to the USL side Memphis 901. So that ship has sailed for the time being. Any thoughts on potential players you'd like to see come to the club, Either of you?
If it's not Neymar, I don't want it.
Neymar is most likely going to follow Messi to Miami if he does come to MLS.
Yeah, could be, could be.
Yeah, we'll see. It seems like neither Neymar or Mbappe are that thrilled about being at PSG anymore. Who would have thought?
Do you think
Who would
uh,
have
do you
thought?
think PSG will take Gam for Neymar?
I don't think PSG know what game is. But let's see. Mike B. Pastor with potentially four players. Well, close enough, Mike. Five. Gone international duty. How would Quakes line up? We established that, but just to recap, we kind of went with Daniel in goal, Thompson, Beeson, Rodriguez, and Paul Marie as our back four. Our midfield three of Judson, Yule, and Securis, and then Kakanovich, Ebobasi, and Espinoza as our front three. And then lastly, Brew on the Discord, he gave us a few different questions. This one specifically for the upcoming game in Portland. What did the Quakes have to do to contain Evander? Abel, how you see that matchup going?
Yeah, that one's a little tough. I think. I
It took a while
mean,
to get going for the Timbers, but now he's kind of established himself as
yeah,
arguably their best player.
very quietly too. He hasn't been making a whole lot of noise, but he's for sure that guy for the Portland Timbers. Um, I haven't watched a whole lot of Timbers, so I'm not, in the tactical aspect, I can't tell you for sure. But I think Lucci just has to stick to his plan and really believe in his guys.
Right. As for his second and third questions, do we think Benji can be a suitable replacement? He hasn't shown it yet, but he's going to get possibly his last chance to really move himself up the pecking order for this season. Otherwise, it'll be out of his control. For number three, he was hoping for Verhoeven, Silly, Muni, and Richmond to get some first team minutes until the Gold Cup is over. We did see some possibilities for all four of them. And the most likely of those four, it looks like Muni because he was introduced during that Sounders game and he had some good minutes there. Um, and he could potentially play right back if we don't want to use Tommy Thompson there. But I'll give you this question, Abram. His last question from Brew. Uh, how do you think the Quakes will approach the next away game? This one being the midweek game against Houston Dynamo.
Um, I mean, I don't think that they're going to settle for anything less than a win. Uh, Away on the road, we have struggled, but that seems to be trending upwards. We're undefeated on the roads in our last two games, right? That's our last two road games, so that is a positive. But Houston is always a team that we want to win. It's a uh, you know everyone knows our history with Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean it's not that complicated. We're just gonna try and win. If things get a little bit hairy towards the middle of the second half, we'll probably see us move to a more defensive formation. I think that we'll see Mensa either starting and getting his starting slot back or coming off the bench yet again. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that we can get some goals early on because I don't want to have what happened to LAFC happen to us, where they scored four in LAFC. I was not expecting that result.
Yeah, that was a big time result for the Houston Dynamo. Previously to that, they lost 6-2 to Vancouver, which could have derailed their season, but it bounced back in a big way. We'll end our time today with a prediction for the Portland Timbers game. So their last five games, they drew to RSL on the road, they lost to Minnesota at home, they lost to Sporting Kansas City in Kansas City 4-1. They drew against Seattle in Lumen Field, and most recently they beat Dallas at home 1-0. So given all of that, I feel like this could be a tight game, but I think the Quakes can keep their momentum going here. I think it'll be 2-1 because I'm sure Evander will unlock the defense once, but I think that we can grab at least two in this game. Your prediction, Abram?
Yeah, I think 2-1 is a good shout. We have had I would say a pretty okay time at holding midfielder players like center mids quiet and making them have a hard time. But Evander, from what I've seen of the few Portland games I've seen, he kind of like drifts and roams around to try and get opportunities. So I think that'll be really hard to keep him quiet. But I do think that at home we have the advantage, and I think that we can get the win.
All right, Abel.
I'm gonna go for a little more hopeful 2-0. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
say Christian Espinoza and screw it, Jackson Ewell. I don't know. I think
All
it's
right.
gonna be a good win.
Nice. So that'll be it for us today. You can follow us on Twitter. Our social media will be in the description at YouTube. But just a reminder, my Twitter is at Ivan Ornelas2, and my Instagram is Ivan the Writer 95. Abel, what's your socials?
On Instagram, it's at Abel.Anguiano. It's ABEL period ANGUIANO. And then on Twitter, it's underscore Abel Anguiano.
All right, Abram.
My Twitter is at lbombastic. Yeah, definitely follow me. And if you don't have time to watch the Quakes 2 games as they're being streamed, I live tweet every single game. There's probably like 15 tweets from me every single game. But yeah, definitely make sure to check that out.
All right. Some combination of us three will be back around this time next week to recap the Portland Timbers game. I'll probably have to watch it the next morning because I will be at the Oakland Roots game as they host the Pittsburgh Riverhands. And I'll write an article on the Oakland Roots for that game, but I'll be back to writing for the San Jose Earthquakes following the St. Louis game. Abel, what are you currently working on?
So I'll be in Vegas for the Nations League semifinals. I'll do all 4 games, so you can expect recaps, a little bit of content, player interviews, all that stuff. And that's going to be Thursday and Sunday.
And then anything else you're cooking up, Abram?
No, I'm. Well, that's a lie. I'm working on a season over the season of Quakes 2, trying to get like an analysis of the very young players like Cruz Medina, Oscar Verhoeven, like I already mentioned, and Edwin Mendoza, and I'm trying to compile like an all-out analysis on how they've done. I'll probably throw in some other guys like Keegan Tingy and Cam Silly, but that is not close to being done. There's a lot of season left to play, and so keep an eye out for that. But don't, uh, yeah, it'll be a minute.
All right. So as you can tell from our time here today, that be sure to keep up with the Tectonic Takes podcasts on YouTube, on Twitter, on Discord, because we're always keeping you up to date with everything that's going on with San Jose Earthquakes and Bay Area soccer, as well as some other happenings throughout the world of soccer. It's a very fun time, of course, even though the European season has wrapped up. There's still a lot to talk about and a lot to follow, of course, with the San Jose Earthquakes and beyond. So make sure you keep in touch with us, and we'll be happy to interact with you as much as we can. So take care, everyone. Have a good one.
Yeah.